This is not how I want my life to end. The car was on its side in a ditch. And then I remember seeing my friend who had gotten thrown from the car, and he was laying there face down.
Welcome to The Growth Concept. I'm your host, Kieran Upton, where my mission is to empower growth through real conversations. In this episode, I'm joined by Emmy-winning filmmaker, storyteller, and adventurer, Barry Walton.
If there's no plan B, you'll find a way to make plan A work. And if plan B is too good of a plan, you'll sabotage A and go back to B. It's about something that has purpose. It's about understanding why you're here, which was a big search of mine throughout most of my life.
This one's real. We talk about the highs and lows of chasing the dream, the role of God and faith through challenges, and the power of storytelling and how it can connect us across different cultures.
I would say you're going to get there. It's just going to take you longer. It's going to take you longer than most. But you're going to get there. Enjoy the process.
Barry shares parts of his life that most people don't see. From the near-death experience at age 16 to chasing his dreams and powering through setbacks. If you're feeling lost, stuck, or like you're playing it too safe, this episode will challenge your mindset and inspire you to take the next step. That's enough from me. Let's get into it. Enjoy this episode. Barry Walton, welcome to the Growth Concept podcast, all the way from Florida. Welcome.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Hello, Australia. I love Australia. I love all down under. I have great stories of Australians. I remember one summer when I was in college in Minneapolis. Two guys were, I think you kind of call it like a walkabout. Is it a walkabout when you kind of go on a long journey?
Long journey.
Or like if you're like on a road trip, you know. I don't know if you call it a walkabout or whatever, but there's a term. Yeah, maybe just a journey. I don't know. There was just like this term that these guys used, but I met these two Australians. My friend Tony, who's my roommate, is very open to people, and they crashed at our place for a couple days, and we became friends with them. And they were driving like this blue station wagon around the country. And then I said, "Oh, if you want, you can go visit my family. They're in Michigan," and we were in Minneapolis. And they drove down, and they said, "Hi, I've got photos of them." And anyways, I'm so fond of Australian people and Australia. Unfortunately, I've never been. I need to get to Australia, but
Barry, what is it you do, and why do you do it?
What I do, I've been doing my entire life, at some level, has been telling stories. It took me a long time to figure out that that's what I loved about what I do, because I started in media and marketing, and I started and I was doing commercials, and I was bored by commercials because I think commercials are just kind of selling products, and there's not a lot of content to them, although they pay well, and you get to do some artistic stuff, lighting wise, etc., and creatively. But I started getting into documentaries in my 30s because I loved telling stories. I loved kind of unfolding kind of what it was about life, unfolding the hero's journey and what it was about kind of, building the audience's attention and digging up people's personal stories. So I started getting into documentary filmmaking, and it's kind of for better or for worse, it's kind of a love-hate relationship. In documentary filmmaking in particular, because there's something about it that's semi-torturous. I genuinely mean that. Like it's how can I explain it? It's just kind of I was cutting on a piece for every piece I've ever cut on takes like 3 to 4 years, and you're just working through it, and it's a puzzle. So it's not like a film where it's just like this scene and this scene and this scene. You get to a point where you're like, it could be better if I took this and moved it here, and then you spend tons and tons of hours of doing that. So it's a little torturous. But, the answer to your question is tell stories, make documentary films, and do video. Professionally, I do video marketing, and I've been doing that for years.
I've read your book, Barry, and I truly think it's an amazing book. But help me understand, with obviously your journey with documentary filmmaking, commercials, at what point in your life did it click with you that storytelling is for me?
I think it wasn't so much about that other than I had explored a lot of different things. I'd gone to college. I actually studied theology in college. And, from college, I moved out to Hollywood and I started doing films. And then I started making documentaries. And in the process, there was a lot of bouncing around that went around. And I think what I found was I loved connecting with people, and I loved kind of like finding way, and I loved being inspired. Like my entire life watching films, one of my favorite films was Rocky. Sounds kind of silly, but it was. I watched Rocky when I was a kid, and I loved being inspired, man. And I was always so like kind of a sensitive kid. Like I'd watch a movie like that, and it would drive me to go out and want to do something and help other people and make other people feel good and contribute to other people's lives. So there was something in there where like I always wanted to connect with people. Connection was a big deal to me. And so when I learned that I could connect, when I would connect deeply with stories, I wanted to be able to pass that on with other people so that I could share that experience with other people and connecting. And so I think, it wasn't necessarily a switch other than it just slowly, I kind of was like, I don't know why I like this. I don't know why I keep coming back to this, but this is what I want to do, and I'm just going to stick with it. And then over time, especially in this book, and especially kind of talking, with you and hearing you share about the book, it like those things like that are the whole reason that I do this. And when you have moments like that where people compliment you, and I'll be honest, for most of my life, it's been hard to kind of take a compliment, and I don't know that I've done like anything extraordinary. Maybe this book is the first like thing that I'm extremely proud of and feel like it's a little like one of maybe the best things I've ever kind of created in writing. But for years, like when people would compliment me, I was that just like turned a light on for me, and I was like, okay, I want to do more of that. I want to connect with people. So it just I was kind of drawn to it as a magnet, And so, there's times when I wished I had been motivated by money, but I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I don't think it's good to be motivated by money. I think you miss out on a lot of life when you compromise. It's kind of what you want, maybe things you dream about doing for money. I think you miss out on a lot of life. But that being said, when you spend your life as an artist, you usually that's the one thing that ends up kind of being absent. So, but that was the biggest thing, was connecting with people.
Connecting with people. Obviously, with reading your book, you struggled a lot in school with that connection and somewhat a disconnection with your peers. And when, for example, you failed third grade, there was that disconnection again. But I want to zone in on that specific period in your life, whether it was graduating school Barry or that failing third grade Barry. Why is connection alone in storytelling so vital for getting a strong point and connecting with the reader or audience as well?
I think in general, the human experience, I think the human experience is meant to be filled with a lot of connection at some level. I think, I might be romanticizing this, but I think like tribally, when we were far less developed, even in villages, there was a lot more connection in the home with your family. There was a lot more connection in the community and the shared experience of the community. I think historically, we were a much more connected society. We knew each other, for better, for worse. I mean, that can be an ugly thing too, because within the romance of that, you have to be honest with yourself. Like, humans have always gone to war with each other. They've always kind of fought with each other, and all the way back into the biblical history of time with, Cain and Abel, the classic two brothers that like had a falling out and one killed the other one. So all that aside, I do think we live in a time when connection, like the human connection and the human shared experience, is probably the least it's ever been in history. Like I just saw a graph where over they did since like 1930 to today or 1920 till today, and the graph was amount of time you spend, and at the top in 1930 was family, and it was like 27% in a given day, and then it was like work, and then it was dot 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 dot, and as it went through the years, by the end it kind of family was down to like 12%, and technology was like at 40%. The amount of time people spend on technology. And then friends was in there, but maybe work was above them. And lots of times at work is so sterile for a lot of people, corporate jobs. And this all goes to this premise of connecting with people. So I think throughout most of my life, I grew up in the technology age, and so have you. There's a part of me that has long craved to connect with people.
Yeah.
I love to see people. I love to spend time with people. I like to go to events where my friends are at. And yet, as I've gotten older, I have less and less and less of that. And I think maybe part of it's because of age, but part of it is also because of culture. Kids don't play in the street as much as they used to. You know what I mean? There's more time gaming, and kids grow up gaming. I think there's a part of me that feels this deep sense that is absent in a large way in my life. And, you know, for years, you asked, the previous question was like, how did I come to this point? And it kind of connects to this, which is like, I think for like years of my life, I've craved to connect with people, have a common shared experience with people. And I think it's been absent. And I think that's what's driven a lot of my desire to like find ways to connect, find ways to share something, so that someone like yourself, and also like can know me at some level, and maybe it can share something in common that we both share. And I, like you shared off before we started about your interest in going to Rome, which is an awesome idea, but that's something that, I'd love to hear about that when that day comes.
Yeah.
Send me a text, send me an email. But like the idea that like I was able to impart some of that, onto you. I think that's the beauty of the way that we're all connected at some level, but I still think there's a little bit of that absence. Like I grew up around my grandma, who was like a farmer girl, and there was like a rich connection there, and you could feel it when you went into their house, and we went to family reunions, and it's in the book, like this kind of like family that was deep country. We were kind of deep country people, you know what I mean? In America, they call them like rednecks or hillbillies. This is kind of like the slang. I don't know what they call them in Australia. But we were deep What's
Bogans
that?
in Australia, Bogans.
Bogans. All right.
Yeah,
so they
Bogans.
call them. So Bogans. We were Bogans. We were at some level. We'd have these fish fries, but there was some deep connection that we all shared in that. I'd walk into the house and it would be dimly lit in the evening, and there'd be lights around the table, and people would be smoking and talking and drinking and playing cards and doing that until all hours of the night, and you just felt part of it,
Yeah.
I don't see that in my life. I don't see that in a lot of people's lives anymore.
I definitely feel the connection aspect is dying off with the amount of technology. And when we break down like technology and stuff, like for example, big tech, like Facebook, for example, Meta, who own Instagram as well, they don't promote connection. If they did, then people would be off their platforms interacting in person. And obviously, a big tech company like that profit off your attention and the time you are on that platform, which when you break down that, it's like, damn, this world is so corrupt. But when saying that, it's just something that we're going to need to adapt to, learn to have better connections with people, which in the end of the day is going to be a skill in itself at some point. This leads me on to your mission, Barry. Your mission is to inspire people with powerful stories and challenge them to think and inspire them to go out and make the world a better place. Why is this your mission in life, and why is it important to you?
Well, I mean, I think it's, I think, again, it goes, a bit of it is that connection, but like, I mean, to your point, like, what did you just say about technology? We're kind of there's like a dark side to humanity.
Yeah.
Money. There's something, and those same tech people that you're talking about, they'll admittedly go take their kids to school where they don't get access to technology until a certain age. They'll make sure that Steve Jobs himself, had spoken at some point in length how he kept his kids away from all these devices. I don't know about Zuckerberg, but I bet you'd find he'd have his own secret life outside of his financial interests.
Yeah.
There's a genuine, like, these people develop these things, and then answer to boards, and those boards answer to shareholders, and those shareholders are disassociated from the consequences. The only consequence they want to know is the financial gains, and so that disassociation is kind of that darkness that you're talking about. And so for me to inspire the world, for people to do something more, like you can read in my book, like hardly any of my choices have been financially motivated. So I believe in God, and I believe that God has kind of directed me in a lot of ways. And as soon as somebody hears that, they're going to start to categorize me. They're going to put me in a box. And, I would caution against that, because, like, as an artist, if I wrote this book and I sit down, I'm writing a book now, and I sit down sometimes and stuff just starts coming to me, and I just put it down. Right. And that's the same with my films and editing, and that's the same with that book. And so for me, like, I don't know how to explain that other than to say there's like something divine about that. The point, that I'm getting at with regards to this is that I've made a lot of these choices because I felt like I've been led by something divine, and I felt like they've taught me things in life and allowed me moments in life to give back to people, to make other people's lives better, and of course to have amazing adventures. I mean, I'm as human as the next guy. Like I make mistakes, and I have selfish interests. Well, you're not talking to a priest by any means, but in those experiences, like, as I traversed through life and lived by kind of the spirit at some level, and lived in search of the truth and kind of my dreams and the fulfillment of my dreams, like, I got a lot from life. So there's a part of me that's like, the example of the prevailing kind of pop culture or the world would be to, especially across social media, would be to like make as much money as possible and show off as much of the money and trips and travels that you make as possible. And that's not to say you shouldn't enjoy the spoils of your successes, but I would argue that life is about a much deeper meaning than that. It's about something that has purpose. It's about understanding why you're here, which was a big search of mine throughout most of my life. And then when you kind of understand why you're here, finding a way to give that back to other people and contribute to people that are in your life, so that, and so that you're making the place better than how you found it, right? So you're making the world better than how you found it. Even when writing this book, like I've kind of been, at first I was kind of hesitant to promote it or talk about it, or I haven't even done a book signing or anything, and I've had people encourage me.
Unknown Adventure?
Yeah, this book, Unknown Adventure, because I'm the central character. And so I kind of have struggled, but what I came to was like, well, why did I write this book? And I wrote this book because I wanted to give something to people. I wanted to give wisdom and experience to people. I wanted to take them on a front seat journey with me and inspire them to do something exciting with their life. And so when I came to that point, I realized, like, I love writing about me. I love talking about me. I'm not gonna pretend.
Everyone does.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, there's always I want to use the word homogeny, but there's kind of like this relationship that everyone lives between, and it's the yin and the yang, it's the chaos and order, it's the path between the known and the unknown, in a sense, to steal from my own title, which is like you have to find that pathway between like taking care of yourself and doing things for yourself, but also finding a way that by doing those things, you're contributing to other people's lives. And I think that's where that kind of inspiring people and helping other people kind of find their own path, live their own dreams, turn those dreams into reality, etc., comes from. And that kind of purpose and that mission is like, yeah, I'm doing things that I love, but but in that, like, you can do them too. I'm not special by any means, and that's kind of the driving force.
With the society these days, the media, you were saying that, I see it as well, that it's always that get rich quick, buy my six-figure sales course and I'll teach you how to get rich, buy that Lamborghini, Aston Martin. But with reading your story, it really stood out to me that wasn't the external like desire. There was like passion, meaning and purpose behind that, which I think is somewhat lost in this day and age. Do you see personally that individuals these days are pursuing that financial gain and not so much their individual purpose, or living other people's dreams and not their own?
It's interesting kind of what you said, like creating self-help books and stuff. When I first started writing this, I think there were a couple times when I, like, in the early period where I looked at this and thought, like, should I be thinking about how this would sell? And if this is in the space of kind of like self-help, because there's a little of it that is self-help, should I be thinking about that? Should I like give people 5 tips? Like, what books are moving off the shelf? That type of stuff. There came a point, and it even says in the book, like, I'm not writing, I don't have any clear plan. I don't have any clear steps. I don't assume that this is going to help you. It probably helped me more than it helped you. In fact, I know it did. It was very cathartic. But I felt like I had this in me. It's been in me, and I've had to like put it out there for a long time. And I took it on from that place, again, from this like internal kind of drive and passion and vision, which I believe is, again, connects to my previous statement about it being somewhat divine. But I think, to your question, what others are doing is, I think it's easy to get sucked up in the trends that are successful, that are kind of booming. It's easy to kind of go look at social media and go, what's and watch like some motivational speaker or some salesperson and be like, what's selling? This is what's selling. If you talk about this, or you do these hashtags, or you do these tags, or if you have these titles, or if you have this picture, or this picture with these words, or the picture with this visual, and there's always an expert, and the expert always is like, I went from 5,000 to 5 million views, and this is how I do it, and you can do it too, and that's right. That's the model, and that's a funnel, and those guys are running a business, and so I think a lot of people, I'm fortunate because I finished this book at 50 years old. So when I was in my 20s, man, I was chasing fame and fortune. I wanted it as bad as anyone. And, at times I made compromises or thought, I guess if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to climb the ladder, this is the way to do it, and at times I damaged friendships that I wish I hadn't damaged, compromised them because I'm like, well, my choice is our friendship or moving up. And I think I need to move up. And I've never looked back at that and been like, yeah, that was a good choice. I've always looked back at that and thought to myself, no, that wasn't actually the right way to move up. It's not the ladder that I want to climb anyways, because at the top of that ladder is loneliness, right? At the top of that ladder is money, but complete loneliness and isolation. And so I think a lot of people get in that funnel and maybe they don't see that bigger picture and maybe they haven't tapped into themselves. And also maybe there's a part of them like this book this book was very humbling. There were times that I had to talk about things that were very hard to talk about, that were very close to the heart. And I was, had my concerns. I'm like, someday people are going to read this and they're going to know things about me that, do I want them to know that? Are they going to judge me?
I got a question on that point.
No,
Why
go ahead.
was it so hard to dig that extra bit deeper in sharing your story or writing your story?
Well, I mean, the saying in storytelling, filmmaking, or storytelling in general, and telling a good story is, and I have it a little bit in the book, is the cave. The cave that you fear the most is the one where the treasure, where the treasure is, or where you will find the treasure. There's a much more romantic or poetic way of saying that. Somebody has done it before me, but that's the truth. So how much do you want people to know about you, and how much do you want in how much judgment do you want to open yourself up to? Usually through the closest people that are to you, but just in general, it's always the question. And then also it's like even talking about failing in the third grade is such a simple thing and seems so trivial. Man, that was so hard for me to talk about. I remember talking about it, and for the first time I talked about it, and when I was like 40, first time I talked about it publicly. I'd always talked about it inside. I always talked about it inside. This is the thing that's funny about life is you may have your own experiences that you feel like you've talked about, or maybe you've talked with like a buddy or two, but you've talked about it more internally than you've ever talked about it externally.
Yeah.
Because we always are reliving those things in our lives. But the first time I talked about it in front of an audience, it was Toastmasters, and there was like 20 people in the room, and I didn't get all the way through it. I broke down halfway through it. It was so emotional, so hard for me to talk about. And yet it seems like third grade, you're a 50-year-old man, and that was hard for you, or at the time I was 45. But it did. It took a long time to kind of uncover that and come to terms with that. And there's healing there, and you break the cycle. But I think it's like anything. It's a sore that's just never healed. You know what I mean? So it's hard to talk about it sometimes.
Do you think speaking about that is crucial in the development of moving on and discovering that next chapter within yourself?
Yeah, it's absolutely. Because what happens is you take a lot of the power out of it. When things are held within you, they feel very powerful and very emotionally you feel like this emotional attachment to them. And sometimes that emotional attachment gives you purpose and drive, Yeah. You might be angry about something, and that anger drives you to be the best at whatever, or beat that boss, or push that person out of the way to get to the top. I listen to Dale. I don't know if you know who Dale Earnhardt is. He's a famous racer over here in America.
Yeah,
he's a famous NASCAR racer over here in America, and one of the most famous. And in his documentary, they talk about his dad. Him always wanting his dad's approval. His whole life was chasing that, And I kind of wonder if, I think later in life he kind of got past that, and he ended up loving his own son, and he ended up passing that love on to his son, who wanted the same thing from him. It was a chain. It was a chain. The fathers did not show love to their sons. The sons wanted their father's approval. The fathers usually died before they ever received it, and the son went on chasing that their entire lives through the approval of other people. And because they never addressed that, they became great champions, but completely unsatisfied.
Gotcha.
And by talking about those things and dealing with those things, they lose their power, both over you, but also over you, So that's that's kind of my thoughts on that.
No, that's amazing. Going back to that whole dream and having this vision in mind, there was a quote I read in your book which I was like, damn, that is such important to consider with a dream, because obviously when you have a dream, there's ups, downs, highs, lows. And this quote goes, I've been let down, disappointed, used, abused, misguided, misunderstood, and disfranchised more times than I can count. However, time and time after again, I got back up and pondered on the search of my dreams. I really love this, and I want to know, what is the root cause and belief system that you had to develop to have such a strong mindset and belief that your dream is going to work?
I actually don't think I was actually that strong. I was just stubborn. I mean, I actually think we all kind of do it, you know, and you do it too. You just don't know it. You're doing it every day. And you always come to a point, like when you try something and fail, or people kind of abandon you, friendships abandon you, or people turn on you, or people like game on you, and they're like, whatever, oh, he's doing his podcast, I guess, you know, blah, 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 you know, they're gaming on you, and they're trying to, that's being disenfranchised. They're just trying to take away your confidence and your sense of self-worth. And sometimes we blow them off, and sometimes if it's the right person or the right time and you're tired, they'll get to you, and you'll reach that bottom. You know, and everyone reaches that bottom, and the thing about reaching the bottom is you always come to a choice. You're like, you know, once you reach your low, you always come to a choice. You're like, am I going to push back up and keep doing this? Or am I going to go, you know, like using a surf term, if you get thrown down, if you get over the falls and get, you know, pushed down, am I going to push off and paddle back out, or am I going to just throw in the towel and go to shore? Everyone comes to that point. And for me, it never made sense to go to shore. It never made sense to throw in the towel, because there was nothing back there for me. You know, it was everything I wanted was forward, but the amount of failure that is between, you know, when I started and now, and the amount of times that I felt like I was quitting. It's easy to look at it now. It's like, well, that's all past, and you're still kind of going forward, and you've had some successes. But man, I mean, it's just sometimes it felt overwhelming at the time, you know. So for me, it's just it wasn't, there was no trick to it, and you do it all the time. You do it both physically in my example of surfing, but mentally as well. Was just like, well, what other choice do I have? Like, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. Sometimes I wish I knew what else I could do. The limitations of having a, you know, disability drove me as well, because like I wasn't really good in school. Like, I'm not gonna go be a doctor or a lawyer. You know, my dad was a factory worker. I saw that path. And my family wanted me to be a trades worker. They wanted me to work in the trades. They wanted me to do that. And I was fine with that. But like, I had seen my dad struggle his entire life. And I was like, I don't think I want that. I don't think that's what I want.
With your story, you were saying when you were 16, you got into a traumatic car accident. And this point in your life clicked with you about God and having a bigger calling. I want to zone in on this specific point in your life when you get back up, look over, and the car's all crashed up, you're out of the car. What did that look like and feel like for you?
It's kind of funny, dude. I've thought about this. I've thought about this moment a lot in my life. Only from the perspective of, like, I lost consciousness. I don't know for how long. I just remember coming to in the car. When I first came to, I didn't know where I was. I was trying to place things. My shoe was off, and I was trying to find my shoe inside of the car. The car was on its side in a ditch. There was grass in the windows. The hood was up. The front window was gone. I could smell gas. And when I smelled the gas, I was like, this thing could go on fire. And that's why I was like, I need to get out of this thing. And then I was like trying to find a way out of it. Fortunately, those Volkswagens, the front, all the windows would pop up. So I went out the front window. And then I remember seeing my friend who had gotten thrown from the car, who I didn't even think to look for until I was out of the car, which didn't make any sense to me, like how he got thrown from the car. And he was laying there face down. And I tried to stand, and then I couldn't stand, and so I fell back down. All I could do was crawl on my hands and knees. And this is kind of, I had like a back injury going on and other things. And I crawled over to him. And, and I literally thought I was going to die, man. We had rolled that car 3 times. I was in so much pain. I couldn't stand up and walk. Like, I was like, I do not want to die. I do not. This is not how I want my life to end. This is not the end for me. I do not want to die. And my buddy, I'm to this day, I'm amazed. I'm thoroughly amazed that he, 1, lived, and 2, walked away uninjured, and myself as well. He literally was a driver. He got thrown out of the car while it's rolling. So you're like, well, how high, how far? You didn't get rolled over by the car. You're very lucky that you didn't get thrown in front of the car while it was rolling somehow. And then the steering wheel was bent like a taco. When his legs came out, the steering wheel bent like a taco. It was a crazy experience. And there was something very divine about it for me. And so, yeah, that was definitely I grew up in a Christian home, but that was definitely a moment where I was like reaching out to God, and I do feel like God healed me. I genuinely do.
That story, like, I can resonate with that a lot because I've had a close enough experience to realize and make those questions that I'm like, oh, I could die at any second. You ask these really crazy questions like, has the life I lived been my life or someone else's, or am I following that dream because it's someone else's or my dream? And it's that point of view which changes, which I think's something we all got experience, but obviously not the close to death experience. That's crazy. But based on that experience alone and having that more guided direction towards God, how did that shape your life to what you're living now?
Well, no, I think at that point, like throughout most of my life, and I mentioned I went to a Bible college and I studied theology, and so I followed the religious route of understanding God, which was a very formulaic understanding of God, and then I completely abandoned that route, and I accepted that that maybe if all of what I grew up Christian religion was true, that maybe by abandoning it, I would go to hell, but I would accept that, right? And I also accepted the fact that, well, if that I'm going to take full responsibility for this, so I'm going to go on my own. So I completely separated myself from religion, and I completely if I was an iPhone, I took the app off my phone, right? And then I began to kind of like go, let me start from zero, but. To your original point, I always had a curiosity, like, is there a God? If there is a God, like, what's the whole point of all of this? And how is he interacting with me? Because I'm not seeing him in the physical form, and there's a lot of and there's nothing miraculous per se that's happening on a daily basis, and bad shit happens all the time. Kids get sick, kids are born with the disease, people die in car accidents. Bad shit happens. We're in war. We blow each other up. It's a weird world we live in. So, like, if there's this God, make sense of this for me, right? So I went through this whole period of questioning everything. And at the end of that period, what I found was there was more value for me in believing in God than there was in needing to prove there was a God. Which isn't going to make sense to a lot of people, but my belief in God gave me something greater than myself, that I could admit that I was powerless to the nature of what was happening on this planet. And yet at the same level, I had complete independence in all of my choices, right? Like, if you're, I just had this crazy thought today, by the way, and I'll interject this in parallel with this concept, right? So right now, humanity is developing AI, artificial intelligence. And the story of God might be one that says God was doing the same thing for humanity, right? He was developing a complete artificial or biological intelligence. And at some point in that relationship, he realized, like, the creation wasn't complete until it was freed to do whatever it wanted with itself. And in doing so, it had no obligation to God. It could destroy itself, or it could turn to God, and it could recognize what he's given to that creation, and in doing so, build a relationship with God. Right? That was the premise. And I thought to myself, in this parallel journey with AI, at some point, humanity will come to this same conflict where they have to release it to complete freedom. And then you'll find out, will it destroy you, or will it kind of worship you, which is what humans would love, for it to worship. They'd love to be a deity. Humans who don't believe in God tend to gravitate towards wanting to be a god or worship a biological human earthly type god, right? We all have this gravity. It's throughout, even the evolutionists, as hard as they try, and they fight it like an alcoholic fights a drink. They fight the denial of a desire to worship something, a desire to elevate something. They fight it because they're like, there is nothing greater than just existence, and then existence is nothing, and it's very nihilistic. But there's nothing greater, and they fight it because you'll never have an evolutionist that is completely at peace with they'll always be defending their position, and they'll never be completely at peace with their position. And I'm confident in that. One of my closest friends is an evolutionist, and every evolutionist I know is always kind of defending their position. Now you can counter that with people that are in religion. I'm not a religion guy. I believe in something greater than myself, and I submit to the fact that I am powerless at some level to this life, and sooner or later I'm going to die. And when I die, I'll learn more about that thing. But whatever that thing is that's higher and greater than me, that had part of my existence, whatever it is, I talk to it every single day, right?
Yeah, I love that.
You know what I mean? So anyway, that was the journey. The journey for me was seeking the discovery of what it is that we're all that the humans continually seek for their entire life. And part of that was peeling away like the layers of religion, and peeling away like the structure of religion, the symbolism, the ritual. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've come kind of full circle where I'm at a point now where I'm like, okay, I've gone completely away. Now I'm kind of back to this place where I'm like, I'm okay with having some of that as part of this, because I know deeply what I believe. And I see value in community, and in communing together, and in working towards a common purpose, within reason. Not a cult or whatever, but
I think that's such a important point, especially with having that some sort of direction. I'm kind of in your shoes. I have a similar vision on a God or a belief system, that there is something bigger out there, where you are meant to pursue what you're meant to, and strive for that. Like, there's that external power that you're living up to, that better version of yourself, kind of like a bit of a self-help hoo-ha, but it's like instilled belief system that is constantly pushing you to become better and better. And I think that's such a powerful way to pursue your dreams and live the life on your own terms. You mentioned a very interesting point in your book as well about the plan A and plan B aspect in a dream. If plan A doesn't work, at least you have plan B, right? I want to see your interpretation on this. Do you feel having a plan B on if the plan A doesn't work is important for more of a successful life? Or do you think having one plan and going all in on that and focusing all on that is far better than having a plan B?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So, there's a lot of talk around this. I've heard a lot of talk around this, and the saying that people like to say is like, burn the boats and take the island. Have you ever heard that saying?
Yeah.
Burn the boats. And that's basically the premise of that is like, there's no way back. I'm only going to do this. A is the option. And you know what? That works. It will work. It doesn't mean it'll work in the way you think it'll work, right? It doesn't mean like I'm going to start a business and it's going to be a Fortune 500 business and I'm going to be a billionaire and I'm going to sell it and I'm going to have this life, blah, 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 right? And so the only way I can do that is burning the boats and taking the island. But it will work in that, like, you probably will, if that's your only option, you'll probably figure out a way to feed your family on your business. You'll probably, you may be surviving instead of thriving, but it'll work. So I've often said, like, if there's no plan B, you'll find a way to make plan A work. And if plan B is too good of a plan, you'll sabotage A and go back to B, especially if it's a comfortable plan. And you're like, oh, but I could stay at this job and just kind of like let the years go by and never really risk that. But I've spent a lot of my life like doing the burn the boats and take the island. And I think what's important in that is, like, do yourself a favor and be honest with yourself with who you are. Set clear expectations about what you're capable of. Like, if I could look back at your history honestly, like, and I look back at my history, I failed. I struggled in first grade. I had to have remedial reading. I struggled in second grade. I had to have surgery and glasses with bifocals. In third grade, I got held back, and I never finished or read a book from end to end until I was out of college.
Same.
Until I was out of college, I didn't read a book all the way to the end. That's a dead true story. And I know the first book I read, it was The Boat That Wouldn't Float by, I forget the name. It starts with an M, Moat or something like that. It's about this guy who sailed. I love sailing. And I was living in my sailboat, and my friend Shawneen Westmiller from college, she bought it and gave it to me. And I remember reading that book end to end. And I was like, hey, I actually do like reading when I don't have like curriculum and a professor that's forcing me to do it.
Exactly.
And then like I started just eating up reading, and I even like read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, which are Ayn Rand's books, and they're each like 1,000 pages, huge books. But the point is looking back at yourself with expectations. That's how I got down this rabbit hole. And so I call myself now confidently, I'm a middle of the packer, which if you're an athlete or a runner and a marathon runner or an ultra marathon runner, you know that term. You're like in the middle of the pack. If there's 100 runners, you're like near 50. You're now near 50. Middle of the packer throughout most of my life. So for me to go, I'm going to burn the boats and take the island, and then think that I'm going to like do it like I'm Tony Robbins, it's not realistic, right? I should probably think more realistic. I should probably look at my history and go, well, I've been usually about a C student. So I'll burn the boats and take the island, but I'll probably create a C class business, or maybe if I work hard, a B class business. And I think that's just being honest with yourself and knowing, like, so probably it'll mean I'll be a sole proprietor and I'll be the center of the business and I'll carry it on my back for the rest of my life. And maybe if I'm lucky, I'll have one or two employees, I won't build a Fortune 500 business that I'll sell off for multi-million dollars. And those are healthy expectations, I think, that you have to balance out. I think if you want something, you have to go for it. I don't think there's any problem with not having a plan B, because inevitably you'll make plan Bs can be made very quickly.
With your process, you mentioned having these realistic expectations, but for you, what's the difference between that realistic expectation and that limiting belief, which is stopping you from reaching that particular goal or vision or dream?
Well, to be clear, like, I never had a realistic expectation. I'm telling you this based on personal experience.
Yeah, good point.
When I moved to Hollywood, I was going to be Brad Pitt. I moved to Hollywood, I'm going to be the most famous actor in the world. When I made my first documentary, I was going to be on the David Letterman show. I was gonna be doing interviews on late night TV for my first documentary, and the list goes on. Anytime that when I started my company, I've never been a realist, and I've never had low expectations of myself. I've had unrealistically high expectations, and probably that's the best. I mean, you're not gonna do it if you might not do it if you don't. I'm just saying this. I'm just saying this from a person who's had experience. You might want to kind of go, I'm going for this, but I might end up here. And is that okay if I end up here? Is it okay? And that's where your plan B comes in. Like, I'm going to go for this, but am I okay if I only get this? Because the trajectory of my life is here. Am I okay with that if that's what it ends up? And if it ends up being that, do I go to plan B? And maybe that's the methodology where you're like, but I've been spending my life, like the front of the book starts, I've been spending my life jumping off cliffs. That's been my life. I say jump.
Amen.
Save money for the future.
Yes.
always find a way to save a little money for the future.
Barry, I've got a couple of last questions for you. The traditional question on the growth concept. If you could go back to your younger self, what would you tell yourself and why with the knowledge you have now?
I would say you're going to get there. It's just going to take you longer. It's going to take you longer than most. But you're going to get there. And I would say enjoy the process. And don't be so hard on yourself along the way. You will move forward. You'll move forward, and you'll have days that you produce a lot, and then you'll have days that you produce a little. And on those days that you produce a little, are bored or don't know what to do, don't feel like you have to sit there and force yourself to produce. Take a break. Go give yourself something, and go easy on yourself. And I say that even still today, and I still. Even this week, just like Monday and Tuesday of this week, I was like losing my mind, Like, what am I going to do? There's no work coming in right now. What? And then someone calls and you're okay.
Such a good point. What do you mean by accepting like the now and not putting too much pressure on yourself? Like, why would you tell your younger self that when your younger self was maybe hustling super hard, putting him in a very uncomfortable situation? Like, how do we distinguish the difference?
Number one, I don't think the outcome would have changed. I think I would have I think I'd still be here. I would have just beat myself up less.
Yeah,
because what drove me here was not how much I beat myself up. What drove me here was like just goals of what I wanted out of life. Like I did not want to, like, I started here. I did not want to end here. I wanted to end here, even up higher. And I was going to keep, it's like a race. It's like being in a race. Like, if you want to make it to the finish of that race, however long it is, as long as you don't quit, as long as you recover, blah, 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 you keep going, you're going to get there. If you don't have to beat yourself up because you're not in first place, or someone else decided that they were going to run a different race and they're done already, or someone finished already and they're retired and they're sitting at a bar all day at 50 drunk, or whatever. You don't have to go, I wish I had done that. If I could just run faster, I would have been there. You don't have to do that. You just have to say, what do I want? Easy going, recover, get back on the course, pick up your pack, keep going. You know what I mean?
Such a good point.
Yeah, because and the now is the only thing you have. I mean, that's Buddhism. That's a philosophy of like where you are. Like this moment is the only thing we have. It's literally so that's the appreciation, especially once you have kids. If you come to that point in your life, you want to live in the now because you don't want to miss it. It goes quick. But the now is what we have, and if you have those goals for yourself, you'll get there. You don't have to beat yourself up.
Yeah, such a important point. Like, I'm just like reflecting on myself right now. It's such a good point that I got to consider as well. Like, yeah, I'm got interviewing heaps of amazing guests, got so many goals and ambitions which I want to achieve by this age, and you don't want to be too caught up in it. You really got to be like, okay, like, appreciate where you are now, live in the now, but also consider the future. Like you were saying, save for the future.
Yeah.
Such a
It's
good
a balance. It's a balance, and then also when you're talking to people, like I tell you that I'm 51, but you don't know what that means because you haven't lived 51 years, and you don't know all the stuff that's in the middle. All you know is like, well, it seems like you've gotten to a place, and I'm not at that place, and I want to get to that place, so I need to work harder and go there, and so that drive, there's nothing wrong with that drive. But to understand, like right now, it's part of the process because what you're picking up right now is what's getting you there. And when you get there, now is what you're going to talk about. Once you get there, I have, I have different opinions. On my awards that I've won, I have different opinions. None of them they don't feel like anything. The only thing that feels like anything is all was when I go all that it took for me to get here. That's all the nows are what have actual context and feeling. The award is like, it's just like this cup. It's just a cup that someone said, "Hey, this cup is a recognition of who you are," and a bunch of people look and go, "You got one of the cups too?" Jesus, and I'm like, "It's a fucking cup,"
Yeah,
Excuse my
not
French,
defined by the trophy, which is something I've also learnt as well.
Yeah, no, those are just compressed time.
The last guest I interviewed on the growth concept left a question for you, not knowing who you are, what business you're in, etc. And this question is, what is your own definition of personal happiness?
Oh man, dude, this is a great segment. That's really brilliant. You're by connecting the guests by throwing a random question out to the next guest. What is my own personal definition of happiness? Is that what the question is?
Correct.
Can I know the name of this guest?
This guest was Declan Edwards. He's a happiness research and expert from Queensland, Newcastle.
Declan from Queensland. Thank you for this question and for challenging me. My definition of happiness. Wow, dude. Wow. Well, I think it's just enjoying what you have.
Enjoying what you have. Enjoying what you have, as in like the now, or?
Well, you have to know what you have to enjoy it.
Exactly. That's such a good way of answering that.
That's the only thing. It's the only way I know how.
I mean, it's so simple, but it goes back to like knowing what you have. Then you can like enjoy that. Such a good point. Barry, what question do you want to leave for the next guest, not knowing who they are, what business they're in, what they do?
Oh man, this is actually a great thing that you've come up with here, and it literally is making my synapses fire so that I can create something that's worthwhile.
That's great.
And that I can pass on and challenge someone else. And I think the happiness was a great question. So so I'm like, okay, well, the bar has been set. Yeah, no, it was a great question, and I think for me, I would pass on to your next guest. What is a moment that you are most proud of?
I love that. Barry Walton, thank you so much for coming on The Growth Concept. Where can people learn more about you if they're interested and want to discover you more?
Yeah, everything I have, my book, The Unknown Adventurer, which is right there. The Unknown Adventurer is on what you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes and Noble. You can Google it at some level. But if you look up Endless Media me.com, endlessmediame.com. Everything is centralized there. You'll find the book there. You'll find links to where you can buy it. You'll find my documentaries there. You'll find bio and further information about me. And yeah, I mean, grab a book, get a copy. I would love to hear your thoughts. Leave me some comments. You can find my email there. Reach out to me. I always love hearing from people and hearing kind of their thoughts. I always love writing back to people as well. I'm not a big enough celebrity where I can't, so I literally respond to I will respond to every email that I get. So yeah, that's the best way to reach out to me.
All links will be in the show notes below as well. Barry
Awesome.
Walton, thank you so much, and I'm truly looking forward to following your journey and looking forward to the next book that hopefully will be coming out soon.
Dude, this is so awesome. We worked hard. We got here. We talked a couple times. We had to reschedule. You're on the other side of the planet. You're 12 hours ahead of me, I think. You're waking up. I'm going to bed. This was so worthwhile. I hope all your Australian guests enjoy this, and hopefully I get down there. If I get down there, I'm going to come look you up.
Definitely. We'll go for a coffee.
Yeah,
Thank you,
awesome. Barry. All right, take care, buddy.
What a powerful conversation. Huge thank you to Barry Walton for being so open and honest with us. Thank you. If there's one thing I hope you took away from this episode, I hope it's that the safe path doesn't always lead to fulfillment. Your dreams, your purpose, and your story are worth the risk. Make sure to check out Barry's work, his book, The Unknown Adventurer, his films, and the production company, Endless Media. All links are in the show notes below. If this episode hit home for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I will continue to grow the show and keep bringing on the guests that you want on. And as always, thank you so much for being part of the journey and community. It means the absolute world to me. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and I'll catch you in this next one. See ya.